The first sign that something was wrong did not come from a telescope or a government alert. It came from silence. At 2:17 a.m. Universal Time Coordinated, a network of deep space listening arrays across 3 continents stopped receiving background noise. Not interference. Not distortion. Just absence. The low, constant hum of the universe, the radiation his scientists had grown used to filtering out, vanished as if someone had muted reality itself. At first, technicians assumed equipment failure. Redundancy systems were checked. Power cycles initiated. Backup arrays activated. Nothing changed. Space had gone quiet. Within minutes, automated systems flagged the anomaly. Within an hour, senior astrophysicists were awake. Within 3 hours, people who were not supposed to exist on paper were sitting in windowless rooms, staring at data that made no sense. Silence, on that scale, was impossible. The universe was loud by nature. Pulsars blinked. Stars screamed in radiation. Galaxies hummed. Even emptiness was noisy. For all of it to stop at once meant only 2 things: either the laws of physics had broken, or something was deliberately suppressing them. At 5:42 a.m. Universal Time Coordinated, the silence ended. Every array on Earth detected the same signal at the same moment. It did not arrive from one direction. It arrived from everywhere. A uniform wave, washing over the planet, bypassing atmosphere, oceans, and stone as if they were not there. The signal was not sound. Not light. Not radio. It existed in a band no human instrument had ever recorded before, but somehow, systems built for entirely different purposes began translating it anyway. The message resolved into patterns. Mathematical. Structured. Intentional. Someone had pressed a hand against the universe and spoken. At 6:03 a.m., satellites began to fail. Not catastrophically. Gracefully. One by one, GPS clocks desynchronized. Communication satellites slipped into safe mode. Weather systems froze mid-update. No explosions. No debris. Just a cordon. For 12 minutes after the message ended, nothing happened. No new signals. No movement from the shapes in the sky. No follow-up explanation. Just a planet holding its breath. Then governments began speaking, mostly to convince themselves they still mattered. Emergency broadcasts interrupted regular programming across dozens of countries. Leaders appeared behind familiar flags, faces tight, voices carefully controlled. They urged calm. They promised cooperation. They admitted, in carefully chosen words, that humanity was no longer the only intelligence at the table. Most people weren't listening. They were outside, staring up. The objects remained perfectly still. Not drifting. Not correcting position. They hung above Earth like punctuation marks placed at the end of an unfinished sentence. Astronomers confirmed what pilots already suspected. The shapes were not in orbit. They were not affected by gravity in any measurable way. They were anchored to something else. In Geneva, an emergency session of the United Nations convened within hours. Translators struggled to keep up as delegates spoke over one another. Some demanded immediate contact. Others argued for silence. A few quietly asked whether any nation had already tried to attack and simply failed. No one answered that question out loud. Behind closed doors, military analysts compared notes. Radar data. Infrared scans. Gravitational readings. Every model collapsed under the same conclusion. Whatever was above Earth was not constrained by known physics. Not faster. Not stronger. Different. At 14:09 Universal Time Coordinated, the circle returned. This time, it did not appear on every screen. It appeared in one place. Low Earth orbit. A new object unfolded there, smaller than the others but far more defined. It resembled a layered ring, segments rotating in opposing directions, surfaces reflecting nothing and everything at once. Space agencies tracked it instinctively, then realized their instruments were being helped. The object want. The world reacted in fragments. There was no single global response, no unified emotional arc. Some cities filled their streets with celebration, treating contact as proof of destiny fulfilled. Others locked themselves indoors, borders closing in reflex rather than strategy. Stock markets froze, then reopened to chaos, then stabilized into something quieter and stranger. Value, it turned out, behaved differently when the universe felt crowded. Religions split, then adapted. Some leaders declared the visitors angels. Others called them deceivers. A few admitted, publicly, that nothing in their texts had prepared them for neighbors among the stars, and began the difficult work of reinterpreting faith without denial. Science departments worked without sleep. Data from the encounter was sparse by design. No schematics. No materials. No equations written down. Only memory, testimony, and a single shared certainty among the crew. The presence had not lied. Independent verification followed quickly. The objects in the sky emitted no waste heat. No detectable energy draw. Their mass, when measured, fluctuated depending on the observer's method, as if mass itself were contextual. Every attempt to probe them directly resulted in clean, polite failure. They were not hiding. They were simply operating on rules Earth had not unlocked yet. Dr. Mira Halvorsen became the most interviewed scientist on the planet and the least satisfied with the questions she was asked. People wanted reassurance or fear. Good news or bad. Victory or doom. She kept giving the same answer. This isn't an invasion story, she said, again and again. It's a mirror. Governments formed councils that no longer pretended to be temporary. Not secret ones this time. Public, multinational, painfully slow. For the first time, nuclear rivals shared real-time data without posturing. Not because they trusted each other, but because the old games felt childish under alien skies. Weapons research stalled. Not intent. The weeks that followed were quieter than anyone expected. The initial frenzy faded as people returned to their routines, but the awareness of the visitors never left. Children looked up instinctively at night. Adults checked the skies, sometimes without realizing it. Scientists walked through labs differently, hesitant to rush experiments that could escalate unpredictably. Humanity had been subtly rewired, not by force, but by observation. Mira Halvorsen worked relentlessly, documenting everything, but she also knew the real work had only begun. The presence had shown the mirror, now it was up to humans to act responsibly. Climate initiatives, energy policies, and urban planning suddenly carried weight far beyond bureaucracy. Every choice felt like a test, every consequence amplified by the awareness that someone, something, was always watching. Not everyone embraced it. Some denied the change, arguing that the objects were illusions, hoaxes, or propaganda. Others used the encounter to justify aggression, claiming the universe had imposed hierarchy. A few factions attempted technology experiments to bypass or replicate what had been observed. Every effort failed. Instruments stalled. Computers froze. Communication lines deadened. It became clear that the universe's presence was not merely passive, it enforced boundaries, calibrated the planet subtly without violating free will outright. The objects themselves became less visible over time, moving farther from urban centers, drifting silently above oceans, deserts, and mountains. They remained, always, but no longer crowding the sky. People began speaking of them less, yet those who studied environmental data, population trends, and energy networks noticed changes aligning with the visitors' subtle guidance. Ecosystems stabilized. Resource consumption slowed. Conflicts were contained before escalation. Humanity's collective decisions shifted imperceptibly, but undeniably. Years passed. Mira Halvorsen became a symbol of